The second half of the 1990s was defined by teen slashers. After the huge success of Scream, theaters were flooded with films in which unfortunate American teenagers were mercilessly slaughtered. Since these movies required young casts, screens were filled with fresh faces. Each new slasher inevitably produced one, two, or even several rising stars, many of whom burned out just as quickly, with some disappearing before audiences could even remember their names. Still, a few exceptions managed to stand out. Today, we'll talk about one of them. Jennifer Love Hewitt's career began in the early 1990s. She took on small parts in films like Sister Act 2, and slightly larger roles in straight-to-video releases. For a while, she went largely unnoticed. That changed with House Arrest. It wasn't a major hit, but it marked her first theatrical release and gave her a noticeable role. With that experience behind her, she went on to audition for I Know What You Did Last Summer. Kevin Williamson had written the script even before Scream, but no studio wanted to touch it. At the time, the slasher genre was considered dead, and no one was interested in another story about sweaty teenagers running around in fear. But Dimension Films took a gamble on Williamson's Scream script, paying $400,000 for it. That gamble paid off in 1996 when Scream, made for $14 million, grossed $173 million worldwide. Williamson suddenly became one of Hollywood's hottest screenwriters, and Sony quickly grabbed his I Know What You Did Last Summer script, paying $1 million. Jennifer Love Hewitt originally auditioned for a different role than the one she ultimately played. Initially, the filmmakers wanted Melissa Joan Hart, but Hart declined, dismissing the film as nothing more than a Scream ripoff. Hewitt was unaware of her decision. Sarah Michelle Gellar, however, knew Hart had passed and came to audition with the intention of landing her spot. Gellar and Hewitt ended up auditioning together, but the producers weren't impressed either. According to rumors, someone on the creative team suggested swapping their roles. After a second round of auditions, both actresses were cast. The producers struck gold with the ensemble, which would later be remembered as one of the best casts in slasher history. Ryan Philippe, for example, wasn't supposed to be in the film. He was desperate to join but didn't fit the original description of his character, a broad-shouldered football player. Yet none of the other actors impressed the producers, so the director decided to give the eager, skinny Philippe another chance, and he won the part. The film faced a quiet controversy before its release. Lois Duncan, author of the original novel, objected to her work being turned into a violent slasher. While her book did feature a stalker, none of the teenage characters were actually killed. When she sold the rights, no one told her about the drastic changes that would be made, and in the end, her objections were ignored. Despite this, I Know What You Did Last Summer became a box office success, grossing $125 million on a $17 million budget, and instantly propelling its young cast into stardom. Around this time, however, Hewitt began developing a questionable track record with her role choices, or perhaps it was just sheer bad luck. Whether due to her agent or her own limited range, her career quickly took a series of rocky turns. Immediately after the slasher, she starred in Trojan War, a crude teen comedy from Warner Brothers filled with every cliché imaginable. The film tested so poorly that the studio gave it a token release on a single screen. With a $17 million budget, it earned just $300 before being sent straight to video. Undeterred, Hewitt signed on for another comedy, Telling You. Compared to Trojan War, it was practically a smash hit, grossing $3,000 in theaters. Its audience score hovered around 4.4 out of 10, reflecting its remarkable quality. Her fortunes improved slightly with Can't Hardly Wait, another teen comedy that grossed $25 million on a $10 million budget, and earned decent reviews for its genre. Hewitt's performance even earned her an MTV Movie Award nomination. Then came the sequel I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, with a title so absurd it deserves its own reward. The movie wasn't a total failure, but its domestic gross dropped from $70 million to $40 million, despite an increased budget. Both critics and audiences panned it, and the next sequel went straight to video without Hewitt. Remarkably, all four of these films, Trojan War, Telling You, Can't Hardly Wait, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, were released within a single year. In that short time, Hewitt appeared in 3 movies that were universally panned. It's surprising her career didn't end there, though the damage was significant. Still, she didn't become more cautious in her role selection. Her next project, The Suburbans, grossed just $11,000 and earned a dismal 4.3 out of 10 from viewers. Around then, Hewitt made her first serious attempt to break into television with Time of Your Life. While its ratings were slightly better than her film projects, the show was canceled after its first season. Seeing that her career was heading into a rough patch, Jennifer tried to be more selective with her roles. That led her to the Audrey Hepburn story. It wasn't a studio production and didn't receive a wide release, but American critics still noticed her performance, though not kindly. Audiences, however, responded more positively. Next came one of her most famous films, Heartbreakers. In this case, Hewitt had a bit of luck, or at least depending on how you look at it. She was paid $4 million, the largest salary of her career at the time, because the project was on the verge of collapse and the producers urgently needed a recognizable actress for one of the two lead roles. Heartbreakers had been in development for years. Initially, the filmmakers wanted Cher and Jennifer Aniston, but both dropped out. Later, Alicia Silverstone and Glenn Close were cast, with Doug Liman, who later directed The Bourne Identity and Edge of Tomorrow, attached as director. But right before production began, Silverstone walked away over creative differences and was nearly replaced by Sarah Michelle Gellar, who ultimately couldn't do it due to scheduling conflicts. Soon after, both Lyman and Glenn Close also left the project. At that point, the producers scrambled and finally signed Sigourney Weaver, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Gene Hackman, and Ray Liotta, with David Merkin, writer and producer of The Simpsons, taking over as director. Ironically, Hewitt was also responsible for the film's most expensive unplanned expense. Because the set was freezing, she tied a hoodie around her waist. Only in post-production did the filmmakers realize it was visible in multiple shots, and they had to spend heavily on digital effects to remove it. The film grossed just $57 million on a $35 million budget. While US audiences were impressed, in some countries such as Russia it found more success. If it had done equally well in the States, Hewitt's career might have shifted upward. Instead, her streak of misfortune continued. Her next major role came in The Tuxedo opposite Jackie Chan, who was at the peak of his US popularity. But despite Chan's star power, the $60 million movie grossed only $104 million worldwide and was hammered by critics. Ironically, Hewitt's best project of that period, If Only, received high audience scores but never got a wide release. In 2004, she had a box office hit with Garfield the movie, though it came with an asterisk. Films like Garfield often serve as safe harbors for actors whose careers are struggling. The movie was widely criticized, and Bill Murray, who voiced Garfield, has repeatedly called it the worst film of his career. By 2005, Hewitt had returned to television with Ghost Whisperer, which ran for 5 seasons. While she worked on the series, several older projects she had filmed finally stumbled into release. In 2007, the $30 million Shortcut to Happiness, directed by Alec Baldwin, hit theaters after years of production chaos and a studio bankruptcy. It arrived 6 years after filming had wrapped, distributed by Yari Film Group. Baldwin, furious with the result, demanded his name be removed from the credits, claiming the editing had turned it into a completely different film. The movie grossed only $600,000 worldwide. Around the same time, Delgo, an animated film for which Hewitt voiced a character, also finally released after sitting completed since 2002. With a $40 million budget, it went on to record the worst box office numbers ever for a wide-release film. When Ghost Whisperer was eventually canceled due to declining ratings, Hewitt shifted to supporting roles in television. One of her stronger projects was the TV movie The Client List, which earned her a Golden Globe nomination. A few years later, she adapted the film into a Lifetime series of the same name, where she starred in the lead role. The show lasted 2 seasons. Reports suggest it wasn't canceled due to ratings, but because of conflicts between Hewitt and the network. As both star and executive producer, she had significant influence and wanted to push the show in a different direction, including elevating her husband, Brian Hallisay, from a supporting role to a lead. The network refused, and an agreement couldn't be reached. These days, Jennifer Love Hewitt acts only occasionally, focusing mainly on her family. She's also released several music albums, which, while modest in the US, have proven surprisingly popular in Japan. It's unfortunate that a mix of bad luck, poor timing, and underperforming projects derailed her film career. After all, Hewitt brought a distinctive look and presence to Hollywood, something that feels increasingly rare today. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.